So what we're going to cover today is just the data editing capabilities for the CCH2 portal. And the difference between data editing and administration is there are two different control panels. There's a data editor control panel and a administrator control panel. Depending on your user permissions, you may have one or both of those. If you're an administrator, you have both of those control panels available. But today we're just going to be working on the data control panel, data editor control panel. Some issues with the agenda. Okay, well, I will just talk about what we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about the website in general, the portal, just generally creating an account and logging in, adding skeletal records, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, searching and editing specimen records. We're going to look at the specimen record, or quote-unquote occurrence records, as the portal calls them. And then some basic functions, printing labels, adding batch determinations, and load management. So those are just some additional things that the data editors are able to do, but we're going to focus mainly on the occurrence records, because that's the most important part. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And then you can follow along. All right. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. And for the latter half of the webinar, I'm going to be answering those questions. So I won't be answering them as I go through the demo, but feel free to put them in the chat box at any time, and then I'll address them later. Okay, so here is the portal. You can get to the portal either by going to portal.capturingcaliforniasflowers.org, or if you go to capturingcaliforniasflowers.org, there's a portal button right here. And I wanted to show you the website first because there are a lot of good resources on this website. So we have information just generally about the project, the description. We have a nice page that covers a lot of phenological research, just some abstracts from really important papers. There's a lot of research that has been done in this area that we're helping to build. There is a document library which will have a list of all of the forms and protocols, and there's a Symbiota guide there. And that's just if you go, if you can't find a specific document that you're looking for, you can always find it in the document library. We also have a Symbiota tutorials page where you can also find the Symbiota guide. And then there are links to other guides. So this is, if you go to the Symbiota page, they have lots of information about using Symbiota, which is the platform, the base of the CCH2 portal is called Symbiota. And then there are some training videos by other thematic collections networks, and then some other small protocols that may be able to help you out. And this website is also where we're going to find a lot of the protocols throughout the whole digitization project. Okay, so back to the portal. That's what we're talking about today. So if you haven't already made an account, it's really easy to do so. You just click New Account, you enter your information, you confirm you're not a robot, you create a login. Then you can log in. That's my actual account, but I created a test account that's just a data editor. And there we go. So still looks like what I was looking at before, but right now it says, oh, there's my name. If you're just going to use the portal for general searching, or you can do this even when you're not logged in, you can search collections. You can search a specific collection, or you can search all the collections. And then you can look for your favorite species, or maybe your favorite county, or some particular set of search criteria that you can enter here. You can enter Latin longs. You can even create a little polygon to search for specimens within that polygon. And you can look at your results as either a list, which will also give you a thumbnail of images. Once we have images, they'll show up right here. Or you can look at a table if you're really just trying to get an idea of the data. Okay, so those are basic searching functions. Now we're going to talk about more of the data editing functions. So to access the data editing functions and any other sort of back-end actions, you'll need to go to My Profile. And the first thing that it's going to show you is this box. This box will have 3 tabs in it where you can make species checklists, and I'm not going to talk about those, but it's a fun thing to explore and use. You can also edit your profile, but this is what you'll want to be going to most often, is your specimen management tab. Once you are in the specimen management tab, you will get a box that will show you all of the collections to which you have data editing permissions. So I'm going to log in right here. So I'm going to be editing the Hoover herbarium that's here at Cal Poly. And there's some basic information that the administrators of the collection have put into the portal. Basic information about the herbarium. You can download the data from here as well. You can visit the web page, and it'll also give you some general collection statistics. So this is how many images we have. That's going to be much different soon. How many specimen records, etc. All right, so I'm going to first talk about adding skeletal records because that's a very, very basic function. A skeletal record is just the bare bones data about a record. And by bare bones, I mean probably just the catalog number and then maybe the species. So skeletal records are usually collected when you are just trying to inventory a cabinet or your collection. And some institutions will be adding skeletal records as they image, just so that we know, or so that there is a record associated with that image as it's being imaged. So to add skeletal records, you click Add Skeletal Records, and then it'll give you this form. And this form can be altered by clicking on this little table over here. This table says Display Options. And you can choose which fields are going to go into the skeletal data entry form. Let's say that all I really want is to, I don't need state, I don't need county. All I'm going to do is the species. The author is going to populate automatically. Family is going to populate automatically. And then I want to mark whether or not I have to redact the locality information once it gets entered, which is not being entered right now. But the locality security is important if you have protected species that you don't want to get poached, for example. Okay, so I'm going to close the options. And whenever you're hunting around the portal, looking for what you're trying to do, there are usually little descriptions that are very helpful that can explain what this tool is used for, how to use it, and there are similarly little eyes and little pluses that will be able to tell you a little bit more about the tool or the field. So if I were imaging a stack of specimens of, let's just say, Nemophila, and I had a whole folder of Nemophila, I would put in the scientific name, and then all I would have to do is scan the barcode. Let's just say I scan this. and I add the record, now a record exists that has this barcode number and this scientific name. Notice that I can enter a new barcode number without the scientific name changing, and that's to enable a really rapid addition of skeletal records. So like I said, if I had an entire folder full of specimens, then I could make a bunch of skeletal records for that entire folder. Alright, let's go back to our data editor control panel, and there are several ways you can do that. You can go back to my profile and go through it the way that we got there first. Or you can just go, you can follow this chain right here and go back to collection management. Alright, here's my data editor control panel again, and now we're going to be looking at occurrence records. What do they actually look like? So usually how to get there is you go edit existing occurrence records, and then you'll have a record search form into which you can enter the search fields that you want. So one important note is that whatever you enter into this field is going to be what it searches for exactly. This is not like a Google search where it'll give you things that are similar to what you searched for, but not exactly. This is only going to give you exactly what you look for. So if I'm looking for records from Jen Yost, but I don't know, did she say her collector name is Jennifer Yost, or is it Jen Yost, or is it Jen R. Yost? I don't even know if that's her middle name. If I just said Yost, I'm going to get no records because there should be a first name in there, but I'm not sure what it is going to be. So what you can do is use the percent sign. You can see I've done this before. And that will say, give me records that have Yost in them and something before Yost. I don't know what the thing before it is going to be, but let's display that table. Oh, and there we go. It's giving me all of the specimens that were collected by Jen Yost. Oh, and Matt Ritter, apparently. So once you've conducted a search, it can be kind of confusing to get back to the search form. All you got to do is push this little tiny magnifying glass here in the corner. There you go. Now say, oh, I want to specifically look for 6,000. It's still by Yost. There it is. To view the record, you just click the Symbiota ID number. Generally, you don't have to pay attention to the Symbiota ID number. That's just something that the portal takes care of and you don't look up. But that's what you click to get to the occurrence field, or the occurrence record. So, and I'm going to use occurrence record, specimen record, and interchangeably because they mean the same thing to Symbiota. Okay, so let's look at this field, or this form. It's got a lot of different fields, and some of them might be unfamiliar to you. You can always look at this green question mark, and it will tell you more information about what the catalog number field is. And this page in general will tell you about all of the occurrence data fields. So for the purposes of the California Phonology TCN, the catalog number is going to be the barcode number. So in most cases, this is going to be an acronym. So this is our herbarium acronym, OBI. And then we're going to have a set number of digits afterwards. So I think we're going with 6 digits. So maybe it'll look something like this. The other catalog number for the California Phonology TCN is going to, for the most part, be the accession number. So this is what has previously been used in most databases to be the number associated with that specimen. Now you have two numbers. You have the barcode number and the accession number, which goes in the other catalog numbers field. So when you're searching for specimens, once they've all been barcoded, you generally want to use the barcode number because you'll have a barcode scanner and you can just scan that number in instead of having to type it out and probably make mistakes. So the collector field over here is just the first collector. You only want to enter the first collector into this field right here. Any other collectors you'll put in the associated collectors field down here, separated by commas. Again, this website or this link will tell us exactly that. The number, not to be confused with catalog number or other catalog numbers, that is the collection number. So this is Jen Yost's 6,000th specimen. Then the date is the collection date, and you always want to put it in this format where it's year, month, day. You might know that there are several ways of recording the month and the day, depending on if you're in Europe or if you're in the United States. So we have this standardized version where you just always go largest to smallest, most broad to most specific, year to day. Okay, then there's this really neat function, the dupes function. And oh look, when I'm going to try to use this, it's going to pop up and say you have a pop-up blocker. So you'll probably have to get around that. You can always allow pop-ups from this website. That's probably a good thing to do since you will there won't be any ads coming from this website. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to search for duplicates again. And it's going to give me this page, which will show me potential duplicates based on the location and the date. Well, that makes sense. There's 6001, 6002. Those are probably collected at the same place. But the great thing about this duplicate function is that it doesn't only look in your own collection. It looks in the collections, all the collections that are on the portal. So you might find a record from a different institution that is a duplicate of your own, and you can say, oh, I'm going to transfer all the data from that duplicate into the fields of this record that I'm creating so that I don't have to do all that typing myself. Then you can click link as dupes, which means the back end, the database itself now knows that these are duplicate records, which they aren't in this case, but you can do that. Like I said, you put the associated collectors in this field. And the verbatim date, anything that says verbatim, means that is exactly what is on the field, or on the label. So this is exactly how Jen Yost wrote the date on her label. But when we put it in this date field, because it's a standardized field, you always have to include zeros before the day if it's a single numeric day. So like here, 0708. If she had collected it on the 10th, it would be 2017 07 10, etc. Okay, moving on, we have the scientific name column, and this is pretty cool because it will automatically populate. So if I were to, let's go and start a new record instead. So if I were going to write in a scientific name here, I just keep on picking copies. A drop-down list will show up, and this will help me not typo when I enter these scientific names. So it's hard to spell Eschscholzia, so I can just start. It's like this. Oh, there we go. Perfect. It's coming up. It's Californica. And then once you click outside, The author will automatically populate, the family will automatically populate. Moving into locality information, if it's in the United States, you'll want to type United States, state and province, let's say California, and a drop-down menu will show up then. County, never put CO or county afterwards. You're just going to say this is San Luis Obispo. Oh look, there's my drop-down menu. Perfect. And then the locality is all of the data on the label that will tell you exactly how to get to that specimen. And like I said before, there's this locality security box, and you check that. If it is perhaps a protected species, or maybe this was a collection on private land that the owner says you can't release this information, you can lock that locality. You can enter a reason if you want. So then in latitude and longitude, if it's a decimal latitude and longitude, you'll enter it here. If it is in some other format, you'll enter it here in the verbatim coordinates. And the verbatim coordinates, once you click this button, will try to populate this by itself. So if it's in degree, minute, seconds, for example, it'll convert it into decimals over here. Same thing with elevation. You can say, I'm going to put this as 180 feet, and it will convert it into meters for you. If you say it's 180 to 200 feet, it'll do the same thing. It'll put that into the elevation. Same thing with depth. But we won't have to worry about depth because we're not fossils. Oops. Okay, a couple other things. Habitat, this is where you put information about what type of ecosystem it's in. So maybe it's a swamp, maybe it's a marsh. Only if it's on the labeled data. Substrate is the type of soil. So let's say I collected this in some serpentine soil. That's where I'd want to put this. Associated taxa is going to be any other species that were noted on the label. So let's say that I also found some Pneumophila immaculata while I was there. And just like previously, the drop-down list will show up. That makes the data entry much more accurate. Okay, description. Description is description of the particular specimen. So if it says leaves yellow or flowers pink, that's what you put here. Any other notes or remarks, you put in notes, unless you're talking about phonology. So this is going to change with this project. We're going to develop more of a checkbox approach where you can mark whether it's in flower, fruit, or bud, or potentially some other types of descriptions of phonology. But for now, any phenological descriptions that are on the label, you can put in here. If it's captive or cultivated for plants, you'll check this box. Then if you have a type, so an isotype, a holotype, whatever, that goes here in this type status. So notice that these boxes are separated according to kind of their general topics. So here we have a locality box, latest identification box. This is curation box, so this is things that relate to where that specimen is kept or what type of specimen that is. Disposition is one that you might use. This is if, for example, you have two different species on one sheet and you store that one sheet with one of the species rather than the other species. You would want to note that. We say stored with, and then you put the name of the species there. you can ignore the occurrence ID field. That's going to be automatically populated. And then whenever you're entering data, you'll want to keep the processing status as pending review. In later steps, we'll have some workers go through and double check the data entry, and that is when they will change it to reviewed. But for the most part, you won't have to worry about that. You'll just enter the data as pending review. Okay, I'm going to head on back to my data editor control panel. Oh, I forgot to mention one more thing. When I have my record editor tab up, notice that there are some different tabs here. Now, determination history might be something that you will edit, and that's where you put annotations. So let's say it was identified as this species before, someone identified it as a different species, or there was a nomenclatural adjustment. You'll add that here. So identification qualifiers where you put AF, CF, something like that. Scientific name, the author will automatically populate. The determiner, so that's who identified it. The date in standard format. And then you can submit the determination. And I think it will automatically check the make this the current determination field, as long as this date is sooner than the collection date. And then you can click add to annotation print queue if you need to print that annotation out. For the most part, probably the annotations will already be printed and on the specimens, but that'll totally depend on your workflow. Once we have images up, they'll show up here in the Images tab. And then only administrators can delete specimens. So if you make a mistake and make a fake occurrence record, then you'll have to tell your administrator and they'll delete it for you. All right, so determinations can also be added in batch. And by batch, I mean a lot at the same time. So you'll go back to your data editor control panel and you'll have add batch determinations or nomenclatural adjustments. And by nomenclatural adjustment, I mean someone has gone through and done a new phylogeny of a bunch of species and decided that this is in one genus or another genus, whatever. And generally, the species has been renamed to a different species. That's when you would do a nomenclatural adjustment. So you've got some questions piled up. I'll get to those, I promise. So if I want to do first I need to define my specimen record set. So these are all the things that I'm going to annotate. So let's say I have 2 specimens in front of me. I scan them in. I don't have a barcode scanner on my laptop, so this is all I'm going to do here. All right, these are the 2 that I want to annotate. I add them to the queue. Oh, perfect. Those are the 2 that I wanted. I'm going to put in all the information that was on the determination page before, and then just click Add New Determinations. And I can say whether this is a nomenclatural adjustment or a new identification or verification of an identification. All right, that's pretty simple. We're going to talk about georeferencing in a different webinar, so join us for that at some other point. You can also print labels or annotations, so if you decide as a collector to only record your data digitally and then put it all in the database and then get your labels out of that, you can do that here. So let's say I'm going to print new specimen labels for all of Jen's collections. There we are. Or I could just say, oh, I only need 6001 because I ruined it. I accidentally spilled coffee on it. I'm just going to print it right here. You can put the heading, suffix. You can include the barcode number. You can print the catalog number. We currently don't have catalog numbers in yet because we haven't put barcodes on our specimens, but those are possible. Then I can either print in the browser, and it will show up like this. You can change how wide it is, how big it is, or you can export it to a CSV file, export it to a doc file. Alright, and one more thing I wanted to demo before we move on to questions is our loan management. Oh, sorry, there's a train coming through, so pardon that. Loan management is pretty easy to use. You just want to put in the number of the loan, and then you select an institution. If the institution isn't already in there, then you can click this little green plus. Oh, nope, I can't because I'm just a data editor. So you'll have to ask your administrator to enter the other collection before you can add this loan. Let's say I was giving one to CSUN. I'm going to create a loan identifier. Once you do that, you can link certain specimens to that loan so that you know exactly which specimens are out on loan. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now for the moment. Oh, I think I'm going to. There we go. And now I am going to answer all your questions. So thanks for building those all up for me. Okay. All right. Kate asks, how do you add multiple associated taxa? And you can do that by, sit on the screen. Once you're in your occurrence records, or sorry, let's create a new occurrence record. You can just start entering them, Nemophila, and then put a comma, and then whatever else you need to put in there. It will automatically show the list for you. All right, we also have how do you add annotation? Oh, got the annotations, done. Okay, how does one enter specimens with an old name that may not be in the drop-down list? That's a great question. One of the great things about Symbiota is that although it has a taxonomic backbone, it does not require the name to be on that drop-down list for it to be entered. So if I had a really old species name, let's say I'm gonna name something after myself. There we go. It's gonna say, oh, taxon not found. So that's a good check for yourself. Oh, did I misspell it? No. Well, I'm just going to say someone else needs to look at that in the future. But that's what it looks like on the sheet exactly, so that's what I'm going to go for. Okay, Joshua asks, are all fields case sensitive, and how does this affect search results? That's a great question, and I'm actually not sure what the answer is. So let's just say I'm going to create this fake one. I'm going to call it that. I'm going to add this record and go search for it. Oh, so one tricky thing about the record search form is that most of the things that you can search for that are default don't include the scientific name. That's what you're going to have to search for in custom field 1. So any of the other fields can be searched for here. I'm going to look for scientific name equals, I'm going to all caps and see if it only finds that one. No, it doesn't. So it's case insensitive. It found both the all caps one and the one that is not all caps. And note that it only gave me the results that were just the genus because I didn't put, a percent sign afterwards. If I were to do that, well, apparently, oh, I see. It contains. There we go. Now I have all the Eschscholtzia. Okay, Terry asks, how many labels can you print per page? And I believe, let's go back to print. Oh, or not. Let's see. I think you can do an indefinite number. It's just going to be either 1 row per page, 2 row per page, or 3 rows per page. Okay, can you review the use of pending review options, especially to flag batches of records made by student interns that need review? Great question, Greg. All right, let me pull us, let's take us to our website so that I can pull up okay. So here's our guide. It's got a lot of information in it. And one of them, there's an appendix that talks about processing status. Oh, you can't see it. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, here we go. Here is our guide to using Symbiota. And there's an appendix that talks about processing status. So I'm just going to scroll on down there. And what we're recommending is the following definitions. So if you have just a skeletal record, you'll leave that field as unprocessed, or it'll automatically be unprocessed. If the record has been transcribed, but it hasn't been double checked, then it's just pending review. If it has been reviewed by someone and they say, yep, it all looks good, then you change it to reviewed. If someone double checks it or transcribes it and they have some issues with it, they say, oh, I can't read this handwriting or anything else, then they'll flag it as expert required. And then administrators, I'm not going to demo this today, but you can go in and look at all of the specimens that are flagged as expert required, and then you can look at them and change them. Stage 3 is this special stage that an administrator has looked at that specimen, but it's very problematic, so we're going to have to be working on that for a while. And then closed is once the record has been transcribed, georeferenced, fully reviewed, as best as possible. Okay. Okay. Flag batches of records made by interns. So one important thing to note on the portal is that anything that is made, so all of those fake records that I made are instantly publicly available. So don't be alarmed. There are a lot of issues in a lot of collection databases, and our users know that. We are not claiming to be hosting perfect specimen records, perfect collection records. This is all a work in progress. So things that are made by interns, you can go back and edit, but no matter what, that data is still going to be available. It's going to be the same in your toolbox as is available on the main page. Okay. What if the scientific name on the sheet has a different authority than the one that appears in the drop-down box? What do you recommend in that scenario? That is a great question. I think generally, well, so I used to work at Florida State University, and generally we assumed that the creator of the label had gotten it wrong, and we just entered it and let it populate. But sometimes we would look up the authorship on the plant list, for example. Yeah, I guess you'll have to decide what you want to do specifically in your collection to deal with that type of situation. Okay, Ellen asks, are there any hints for being able to search for collectors who lack collection numbers where you want to find the collector and date combination? Let me go to the portal again. See if we can search some records. Okay, going back to the portal. And Ellen, are you talking about, oh, I see, editing your own records. That's in the editing search function. So you're looking for, want to find the collector and date combination? Well, then you would just put in here Yost or Ritter or whatever you want, and then the date. I don't know if he collected anything on May 1st, but no, he doesn't. So you can put anything that you need to into these fields, or anything that you're searching for into these fields, and then any other fields that you want to search in, you can find in this custom field 1. If you want additional things, you can always click this pencil with a plus, search for something else. So I want to look for things that are specifically in this genus or at this place. And you do want to pay attention to this middle qualifier box as well, because you could say, I only want ones that are not in the United States, for example. So I'm going to go up to country. I don't want it to be in the United States. We might not have any, oh, we do. We do have specimens that are not in the United States. So there you go. All right, once we've entered a new record with an image, we're thinking of adding an annotation stamp reading, for example, digitized for CAP TCN project 2018 to 2022. Any comments by you or others? I don't think we're adding a stamp like that. I think it's totally reasonable. It's just another step that you would be adding. Let's see, is there a way for students to specify what they need reviewed? My students often have to tell me a little thing on a sheet they would like me to look at. Yeah, so what you can do is you say, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm doing with this one. It needs an expert. I think what we're recommending is putting that in the occurrence remarks, possibly in brackets. So you could say, I can't read the bottom right word on the label. You might decide that there's some other place that you want to store this, but I think generally other institutions have been just doing that. Or you could say, you know, bottom right word illegible. You want to be more formal. So I think that's how many people are doing this. Will there be a copy of this webinar? Yes, there should be if the if the recording function that I said, yeah, this is recording, and I will try to put it on our website if possible, unless it's too big. All right, any other questions? Thanks for all your great questions. These are good things that I have not covered. Well, great. Thanks for joining me again. And like I said, we're going to be having several other webinars following up on this one. This was just a general data editing webinar. We're also going to have an administrative functions webinar, a curation functions webinar, and a georeferencing functions webinar. Oh, Susan has another question, so I'll stall until that comes out. But feel free to, or please do join me for those webinars. I'll be sending out emails to all the administrators about those when we get them scheduled. And of course, if you ever have any questions about training outside of the webinars, feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email. Here we go. That's my email address if you want to ask me any questions about the portal or about the project, anything that you are confused, concerned, interested in. And there's also a feedback form on the website where you can put information. If you say, oh, we don't seem to have any training available about this, then I can either create some material or I can link you with some material that already exists. So Susan asks, are we going to have drop-down fields for phonology? And yeah, so in the future, as we keep on developing the phonology portal, there's going to be probably a set of either a drop-down list or a set of checklists that we're going to use. These are just going to be developed in the next year or so while we are developing which phonological standards we're going to use. All right, well, if there are no other questions, then I'll just thank you for joining me again and hope you